This presentation is presented by U of C Hong Kong Concern. We are a group of Hong Kong students who want to raise their attention about Hong Kong on campus. Today we are going to present the topic why Hong Kong matters on international stage. I hope you enjoy it.
So basically today we are going to touch on this couple of topics, the link between Canada and Hong Kong, a little bit on the history and background of Hong Kong, and also finally a bit about the recent social movement that is happening right now in Hong Kong. So to start with, I'm going to show you a clip by Sky News in the UK. This is a clip about the relationship between China and Hong Kong.
It goes back.
Sorry, guys.
The relationship between Hong Kong and China is at its lowest for decades. It goes back hundreds of years, but these are the 6 moments you need to understand to really get why it's become such an important issue. 1842. This is when Britain took control of part of Hong Kong after the First Opium War. Fast forward 5 decades and China gave them the rest of it, but only for 99 years. 1997. This is when that lease ran out. By that time, China had been a communist state for nearly 50 years, and Hong Kong remained democratic under UK rule. Britain handed control of Hong Kong back to China, who introduced the one country, two systems rule. Basically, this meant that Hong Kong would be guaranteed a high degree of autonomy from China, but would technically still be part of the country. Hong Kong kept a capitalist economy, freedom of speech and a free press, at least until 2047. 2003. This was the first major sign of discontent from Hong Kongers. Pro-China politicians tried to introduce a bill that banned criticizing China. It triggered huge protests, with 500,000 people taking to the streets. The bill was withdrawn, a big win for anti-China protesters. 2014. The umbrella movement went on for months in Hong Kong. It was named that after demonstrators started using umbrellas to protect themselves from police tear gas. Protesters thought China's proposed changes to Hong Kong's electoral system were too restrictive. Thousands protested, and the controversial reforms were shelved as a result. 2019. 5 years later, the biggest demonstrations yet took place. This time they were triggered by a bill that would make it easier to send people to mainland China to face trial. But the movement became much bigger and gave people an opportunity to resist the growing influence of China in Hong Kong. 2047. For many, 2047 is the most important date. This is the year that China is supposed to get full control of Hong Kong, ending the one country, two systems rule. Chinese leader Xi Jinping recently changed the law, meaning he could be president for life. How he deals with Hong Kong is going to be a key part of his presidency. He is stuck between not looking too heavy-handed to the West and not looking too weak at home. Whatever happens, this already fraught relationship isn't showing any signs of improving.
Okay, I believe you have some basic idea about the relationship between China and Hong Kong. Even though the city is far from Canada, Canada has a stake in the city. Back to World War II, there was 2,000 Canadian troops was sent to Hong Kong for defense. There's a high casualty of the troops. Almost half of the soldiers in the troops killed or wounded. Other than the relationship and the defense of the Canadians for Hong Kong, right now there are over 300,000 Canadians living in Hong Kong. We should concern their life and also the development of the city, which is closely related to this country. You can see from this picture, every year there's a memorial for the incident, and you can see the veterans still standing here. Other than the Canadians living in Hong Kong, we can find a lot of Canadian companies who has which has branches in Hong Kong, like BMO, RBC, and Husky, which well known by you guys. You can easily find in Hong Kong. The country, Canada, should not only protect its citizens, but also their interests in Hong Kong. That's why we should. That's what we want to raise the concern and attention. Hong Kong is a special administrative region in China, which means there's a one country, two system principle for the whole administration. It means China is only responsible for its diplomatic relations and military affairs, while Hong Kong is responsible for its internal and external affairs, including political, legal, economic, and financial stuff. Behind the one country, two system principle, Hong Kong is a special city or special place for not only mainland China, but also to the international society. Why? Because Hong Kong is the only place in the world run a capitalist system in a communist country. It means the two value system converting in the city, in the special place. Hong Kong inherited British legal, administrative, and political systems, economic systems, while it is a part of China. Its economy is highly integrated with China's economy. And Hong Kong has its tradition of Chinese culture and Chinese network. It is a special case for doing international trade between China and the West. That's why it acts as a bridge for connecting these two systems. Other than a bridge and the relationship between Canada and Hong Kong, we should also understand its international nature. Hong Kong is an international financial center, ranked as the third in Asia and sixth in the world. It means it's a really important financial place and transaction area. Hong Kong is also the most important capitalization area of China, play an important role in its economy. Hong Kong is an open society, just like Canada and some Western countries, but its election is not fully diplomatic. It's not fully democratic. Like the chief executive, who is the head of government in Hong Kong, she was voted by a 1,200 member election committee, and she got 777 votes for its election. While Hong Kong has over 7 million population, which means she is not accountable to the public, and the election committee is a small group of people that could be highly controlled or affected. Other than the head of government, we have an election for Legislative Council, which is the legislation body in Hong Kong. But only half of the seats are elected by the public, which means the legislation body in Hong Kong is not wholly or fully responsible to the public or reflects the public's opinion. That's why we have the social movement and some construction, some conflicts outside of the political system. In the beginning of the social movement, most protesters go on the streets is because of the suspect or difference between Hong Kong's legal system and China's. There are two cases that can thoroughly show the difference between Hong Kong and China. One of them is the case of Liu Xiaobo, who is the 2009 Nobel Prize winner for a peace prize because of his long and non-violent struggle for fundamental human rights in China. He's an academic and social activist who is really peaceful, and I think you still remember the empty chair in the Nobel Prize ceremony. He was kept in jail at that time, and he could not attend the ceremony. Why he was put in jail is because he wrote a reform statement to request a reform for the constitution in China. That is totally legal in Hong Kong, but that's not the case in China. The protesters highly suspect that this situation would transfer to Hong Kong. That's why they protest to try to stop the pass of the extradition law from the government. And other than Liu Xiaobo, his wife, Liu Xia, who is also activist, she didn't go through court trial, but under unlawful house arrest since 2010, mainly because she is the wife of Liu Xiaobo, and she was kept separated without any company, and it makes Liu Xia's mental health really bad. Other than Liu Xiaobo, the Chinese in mainland, we have another case in Hong Kong, who is Lam Wing-Ki. He is a Hong Konger, Hong Kong citizen, a bookstore owner. He published some materials banned in mainland China. One of them is related to President Xi's love affair, which is really serious in China, as it is a scandal, some criticism to President Xi, right? But this is totally legal in Hong Kong. What he experienced is that in 2016, he was kidnapped at the border between Hong Kong and China, and he was detained for 8 months. And luckily, he escaped and came back to Hong Kong. According to the official charge announced by the Chinese government, there are two: importing censored materials to mainland back to 2012. Remember, he was kidnapped or arrested in 2016, but there are some problem in 2012. Other than that, he was criticized and charged with extramarital affair which is totally legal in Hong Kong, but not case in mainland. Yeah, I hope you won't experience that. Okay. Once he heard there's a proposal of extraditional from the government, proposed by the government, he decided to flee to Taiwan because he criticized that he don't want to experience the same thing in Hong Kong. That's important that the legal difference between Hong Kong and China make Hong Kong suspect to the extraditional proposed in this year, few months ago, and what it creates is a social movement that will be presented by me.
So as of today, we're entering the 130th day of protests, and as you learned earlier before, what started as a protest against against an extradition bill, against sending of convicted criminals from Hong Kong to China, has been evolving since June. And so initially people were demonstrating against a stricter restriction from the Chinese government and the Hong Kong government on its people. But as event progresses, we have witnessed police brutality, we have witnessed a lot of injustice from the government, and that's why, and those things have been fueling the protests. And so the rally itself, as you can see, over 1 million people went on the street for more than few times. For at least on at least three occasions, there has been over 1 million of people on the street, and there have been numerous other smaller scale rallies, smaller meaning at least 10 or 100,000 people. And we have been demonstrating in different ways. There are traditional rallies, people march along the street. We have also, I want to show you this here, what is called
You watched the whole game, all the games, all season. You know the
Hong Kong Link. If you would wait for 10 seconds. So it's actually as a tribute to the Baltic Way in around 3 decades ago, where citizens in the Baltic country came in solidarity together, holding hands, and formed a human chain for longer than 100 kilometers.
Yeah.
So we tried to replicate that back home. This is in August, and people were holding slogans, holding signs, or holding their mobile phone as a torch to show solidarity to all the protesters and activists back home. And so those are the rallies in Hong Kong. But here in Canada, here actually in Calgary and Edmonton, there has been several protests and rallies as well to show solidarity to our people back home. And so we were up in Edmonton last month, and there has been also other cases, other incidents where we were demonstrating right here in Calgary. There has also been, as you can imagine, in other bigger cities like Vancouver, Toronto, or even outside of Canada, in the US, in Australia, people from Hong Kong who moved there have come out to show solidarity and try to spread awareness within the community as well. So one of the main themes of all these protests is what is called 5 demand, not oneness. So it is sort of a mutual agreement among the protest groups that as long as government does not respond to these 5 demands, we are going to keep on struggling, keep on fighting. So the 5 demands are, the first one is to completely withdraw the original extradition bill that causes all the protests since June. The second one is to reject the characterization as the government was calling on some of the earlier protests as riots. Also, the third one is to withdraw all the charges, criminal charges against the protesters, against the arrested activists, and also to set up an independent investigation, both on the police, on how they were handling the protests, and also on the protest side, on how some of the events have happened. So we basically wanted a complete and independent investigation on why things happened as they did, and we wanted to know what has causes all this fight and protests for more than 4 months now. And the last demand is to have a full democratic election for our government and for our legislative body as well. So since the 9th of June, where the first rally was held, these are some of the numbers that I've gathered from news and from the internet on sort of to give you an idea of the scale of the protests. The rally itself, I was trying to count how many rallies there has been, but I lost track over after 100. So basically there is at least 1 or 2 bigger events every week, and there are also smaller gatherings and solidarity rallies within the week. And to give you some idea, there has been over 2,000 people who were arrested. More than 700 of them are minors, so they are under 18 years old. More than 1,600 people were injured on the protester side. And on the police side, I would like to highlight that so far there has been no investigation on any of the policemen on their action on the protester. So none of the police are being investigated or arrested for sure. But in terms of numbers, the number of tear gas they have used, over 4,000, and also other kind of weapons to sort of control the protester, to control the situation basically. They have used rubber bullets, they have used react rounds and beanbag rounds, so these are all potentially lethal weapons, and they have used on the protester, and there has been cases where some of the protester has been injured in their eyes, in their chest, in their arms, and in the head as well, and these are potentially dangerous injuries. And the police have also used live bullet for now. More than 11 rounds was the number, but in one case, as you will see later on, an 18-year-old boy was shot in his chest, 3 centimeters from his heart, with a live bullet. So these are the struggles that people are facing. These are the situation that people back home are facing. So yeah, in the following I'm going to show some videos and photos that may be disturbing to some of you. So if you think you won't be comfortable with it, I ask you to just
turn around.
wait for a couple of minutes. So as you can see, this video is from New York Times. It's showing in the earlier stage back in June how police are using different tactics to handle the protesters. So there has been some arrests, some cases where they have used I believe that was a beanbag round, and also other incidents as well. And on the top right is that there was an incident that happened back in July, and the people in white shirt, people have found out that they're a member of a local gang basically. So, and they were attacking in a train station the people who have earlier that day have been on protest out on the street, and they were returning home, most of them. And there are also other regular citizens who were just taking the train. And so on that night, 21st of July, there are some gang members who went to this particular train station and start attacking people. And on the lower right is from another day in August, where someone was cut in his arm with a long knife, also done by some alleged gang members. So these are incidents where activists or protesters, they were trying to express their view, their voice, whereas people with opposition ideas or opposite opinion were trying to silence them, basically using violence.
And on that night, the police disappeared. When people call for the police, they reject come or just return back to their station when they came here and see what happened.
So yeah, and on this slide, I would like to show, like, so on the left is what the some of the protesters are doing, and on the right are what some of the police are doing to the protesters. And finally, this was the incident that I mentioned earlier, where an 18-year-old boy was shot in his chest. So as you can see, he was bleeding. So that's what we have to show you for now. And I would like to conclude this short session with a quote from Martin Luther King. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And our lives begin to end the day we become silent on things that matters. And Hong Kong, we believe, is an outpost of some of the common values that we appreciate in the developed world or in the world. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of the press, basic human rights, and justice. And we believe what has been happening back home, we have a duty to let the world know what has been happening. Because if we don't pay attention to, if we don't appreciate what we are enjoying right now, there may be a day that these things will be taken away from you, meaning that human rights, freedom of speech, and the right to protest and to speak out for injustice and to speak out for your own will. So that's it from me.
Yeah, I want to express some of my view on the movement. I believe the whole movement is, the main purpose of the movement is to preserve the current life that are enjoyed by Hong Kongers. The way of life is protected by the common law, the rule of law, and we enjoy the freedom of speech, freedom of publication, and all the basic human rights. Even though the social movement evolved into one that against the police abuse, violence abuse, the purpose doesn't change. They still want to preserve their original lifestyle, the safety, social order that they enjoy. That's why they hate or double standards from the government. Even though you may think it's far from Canada, it's far away, that should not be affected by the movement or what's happening far away. But some cases and some incidents happen shows us it could be really close to our life, like NBA. Have you ever heard that? one of the manager, the Rocket's manager, Maury, just retweeted the post for supporting or stand with Hong Kong. We support the freedom of speech. And then he was criticized, seriously criticized by the Chinese government, and there's some issue between NBA and the Chinese government. And also the Blizzard, one of the player, the competition player, expressed his expressed his opinion for supporting Hong Kong protesters, and he was banned by the company competition organizer. And also South Park, which is criticized by many mainlanders and Chinese people because of episodes that criticized our presidency and the Chinese legal system, and also Winnie the Pooh, who is like our president. Yeah, and he was not our doesn't matter. I think we can discuss it in the discussion section, and yeah, that's it.
So we forgot to mention that this presentation is being live streamed on YouTube, and it will be uploaded afterwards if you want to share it with your friends. And this event is being broadcast right now in Winnipeg, I believe, and also Waterloo, I think. And so I thank everyone for coming, and I thank everyone who is watching the live stream right now. And we encourage everyone who have participated today to have discussion with your friends or with us to share your thoughts and views on these issues. And so we believe this is the end of the live stream, and we are going to hold an open floor discussion right now if you have any questions for us. Thank you.
I have a question back here.